Hello developers, how are you doing today? Welcome back to your channel TapasScript where you learn things fundamentally and conceptually. Today again we are going to learn about another vital concept. We are going to learn how to use React Context API with Next.js app router. If you are building application with Next.js and a larger application, especially in the e-commerce kind of thing, you would like to implement something called add to cart, remove from cart, or managing the cart. We are going to understand how to build such functionality using Next.js app router and the context API together. Are you ready for it? Okay, so let's get started. But before that, an usual request. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell button so that whenever I create good content, you get a notification about it. And it's also act as a great motivation for me to create greater stuff for you. With that, let's get started. So as we are building an add to cart functionality, what we'll be doing is we'll be adding a couple of buttons for each of this book that we had created previously in our video. And then on click on each of this button, there is a action happen like a book ad gets added to the cart for buying or renting. You are able to see this number is also getting incremented and there is also some kind of alert or some kind of notification you're getting. Now, if you go to the cart page by clicking on this cart, you can directly see like, okay, I have added 2 books for buying. I have added 1 book for renting. I have a delivery charge for 29 rupees and the total amount that I have to pay is 389. You also can see like I can manage my cart little bit better. If I don't want this particular book, I can knock it out and that immediately impact my price. And once I'm satisfied, I'm going to enter few details like my card number, my name, my card expiry, a PIN, and finally I can go to making payment. As I make payment, I get an order ID get generated and my order tracking will come in future. Isn't that awesome? Are you going to build with me? Yep. But we won't be building all this feature. I'll be giving at least 2 to 3 features for you as a task, but 80-90% feature we are going to build together whatever we have seen now. Let's go. So people, let's get back to the basics. The basics means our design. So what we talk about here is how this add to cart functionality gets implemented. In our design phase, we have seen like as and when you add to cart by clicking on any of this button on the book card, what happened, the items is getting added to the cart. And once you click on this number, you get to the payment details and they do the checkout. I thought, why don't we change the design a bit? Because we already spoke about in our initial video that some of this design may get changed as we progress. We have a reason here that why you should change this design. The reason being we don't have any authentication authorization system yet. So we don't have any user and there is no top level navigation at all at this point of time. Everything is being managed at the left sidebar. So why don't we do the change accordingly to have the cart option in the left sidebar itself and manage there from one navigation point of view. So the changes is instead of track order, we'll have cart over there with the number of items gets added to the cart, just like this. We have a cart option with how many items have got added to the cart. Track order option is there as it was there before. As and when we click, this number gets incremented. Once I click on this cart navigation item, it goes to a payment details and order info page like before. I don't have anything in the top navigation now. I go do the payment, checkout, and all these things basically happen. So everything remains same. I just moved the cart option from top to the navigation. Now it's time to implement and code. All right, so the first thing first, we are going to add 2 buttons on each of this book cart. One is for adding to the cart when you want to buy the book, another is for adding to the cart when you want to rent the book. Add something called one new component, add to cart.js. This is the book cart component that we had written in our last episode. And then what we're going to do here, we are going to add a new component which you have not created yet. So it's going to give some error. Don't worry about that. Let's do add to cart is our component name. And we already have the book details. So we pass that as a props. What we're going to do, we are going to create this one. Now to create that, copy this name and you know where to go. You will come under UI and then you will come under books and create a new component called add to cart.js. Creating a new component, we know that it takes a props called books. Let's get the structure for it. We'll be adding 2 buttons here. One says to buy, another says to rent. Then we'll do an export default. The component is ready, at least the skeleton. Now let's go to the book cart.js so that we can get rid of this error. Import this component. We have given the component name as add to cart. T as in is the capital letter. So we'll change that over here. That's it. So we have the UI back again and we see 2 small buttons over here. If I zoom in, called to buy and to rent. Okay. So the buttons are there, but of course they're not looking great. Let's put some style to make them look better. So the top level, let's add a flex. Let's add a justify around so they get a space between them. Some amount of margin top. Let's add a top border so that we create a separation. And as and when I'm typing the code, you can see the changes happening at the right side. And then let's give a padding of 1 pixel. So we have 2 by and 2 rent placed quite well. Now next, we'll be adding some classes to these buttons. Let's add a background color and a hover color. Change the text color to white. We can make the font bold. Some amount of padding at the bottom, some padding at the top, and let's make the button as rounded. Looks good. This buttons looks good. So the same style that I can use now and put into the other button as well. Great. We have both the buttons ready. We can make it little more elegant by adding an shopping cart icon to this button. So for that, let's import the shopping cart icon from the library that we use called Hero Icons React. So here I have imported that. And then along with the text that we have like to buy and to rent, along with that, we can use this guy quite easily. So we'll be doing like this. So you see here, we got this shopping cart over here. Same thing that I can do over here as well. So I have it for to rent. So we have both the buttons over there and they are fantastically placed. The next thing that we need to do is to add some kind of interactivity to them so that when I click on them, something happens. So whenever user click on this to buy or to rent, we want to add this book to the cart. And in design, we have seen that cart is a new navigation item over here. So let's add that first. We will add the cart option just above the track order. Let's copy this track order guy and paste it over here. Change the name to say cart and let's give it a route so that we can see what and all got added to the cart. And let's give a shopping cart icon, the one that we used in the button. The same icon we are going to use for this as well. So we'll be using like shopping cart icon and we have to of course import, otherwise it will scold us. Already started scolding. We have imported, things are back. So if I go over here, I have a new navigation item called cart. Right now, if I click on it, nothing is going to happen because we have not implemented /store/cart yet, which we'll be doing in a while. But now our objective is like as and when I am clicking on each of this button, this book information should get added to the cart and we should have a number getting incremented over here each time I'm adding a book for either buying or renting. Also, another thing we want to do is like every time someone click on this button, we want to show a kind of notification saying that, hey, this book has got added to the cart for buying. Hey, this book has got added to the cart for renting. All this thing that we want to do. So for that, we are going to use a library for toasting. First, let's install that. The library we will be using for toast message is called React Toastify. So I'm going to install it using yarn add command, yarn add React Toastify. It will get installed in a while. Yes, it's got installed, so I can use this one right away. I'm back to add to cart, and here I'm going to add the click handler to each of this button. To do that, I have to do on click. This is simple React, a function called handle cart. As we are handling buying the book, we'll pass a parameter called buy, and the same thing exactly for the other button which is for renting, but instead of buy, in this case we will add it as rent, so that we can identify using the same function called handle cart. We can identify this when this function is getting called for buying the book or when this function is getting called for renting the book. So each of this button now have got an on click on that we will execute this function. But where is this function? We have to create that now. And what it is supposed to do, this function is supposed to add a particular book to the cart for buying or for renting, depending on from where it's been invoked. All right, so define const handle cart. First is the event and then the reason, whether it's a buy or rent. We'll do a e.prevent default to prevent the default because we'll be handling the click function in completely in our way. And then we will construct a new object. We have the book object over here, which has all the information about the book. If I just do a console.log a book over here, let's make it a book because it's a singular. Now, one more thing we have to do over here, as it is a component that is handling the user interaction. That means it has to be a client component, and even the error says that event handlers cannot be passed to a client component props. So we have to make this as a client component, and you know already what to do. Use client. All right, so I'm back and let's click on to buy. You see it's getting printed already, the book information. That means my function is getting invoked. That is great. Now what we're going to do, taking this book information over here, we are going to add this information whether this book is for buying or this book is for renting, so that when we add to the cart, we know in the cart itself if this book is for buying or this book is for renting. So I'll destructure it and then add a new property to this book array saying the book is along with the reason. Okay. So now I have a book. As and when I click on it, I have a new book, the book itself, along with the type that why this book is chosen. Is it for buying or is it for renting? So far we are good with this one. Now what we'll do, as we have the book, show you guys a toast message. Now to use the toast, you have to import one more stuff, import toast from the library that we installed called ReactToastify. And of course, we have to show a success message over here. So we'll be doing like toast dot success. How it works, first you can show a message and then also you can give some options, for example, for how long you want to show this message and where do you want to bring this message, etc. So you will say like added the book title to the cart, though we have not added to the cart yet, but some implementation we have done. So on click on it, we can always show. We'll do a auto close. So auto close means close this in once again after 1 second of showing. And then the position, let's bring it like toast dot position top right. Great, we have the code. So now let us just click on buy. It doesn't work because we are using things from ReactToastify, but we forgot to initialize ReactToastify at a global level. Now to do that, open your layout, the top level layout. Here import toast container from ReactToastify. And at the layout level, basically, before you close the body, see here, you can use this one. So it means that for entire layout, this is available. So wherever you are going to show the toast messages, this toast container will tackle that for you. And the last thing that you have to do is to import the Toastify CSS also so that you can see the UI properly. So I've imported ReactToastify /dist/ ReactToastify.css is from, it's npm. So imported right after the container. So it's all set. Now what are we going to do? We are going to test it out. Click on this buy. Oh, we are seeing added Great Gatsby to the cart. You see that? Now, if I do rent this one, oh, added murder to the cart. This is awesome. So you wanted to add it to the cart using this button, wanted to show some kind of toast messages, we are able to do it. Now we have to build the functionality of adding to the cart actually, so that as and when I'm clicking on this guy, I want to see this number is getting incremented properly. Now for that, we have to use something called context API. So in React, there is a context API. We will be using the context API. And now we'll learn with Next.js app router how to use React context API, the provider and everything to get this thing done. But before that, let us recap what exactly React's context API is. In React, we have context API for information sharing. The state is a private data to a component, and we use props to talk to each other as a component. For example, if we want to pass data from one component to another component, we usually pass it as props. But the passing and props throughout the component hierarchy could be really costly, and you may have to pass the props deep down in a component, or you have to try to pass the props from the child to the parent by lifting up the state and all these things. So instead of doing everything, if you want to share a piece of information throughout your application or partially as a part of your application, you can use React Context API. So for example, I can use React Context API to pass a family secret from parent to children to grandchildren everywhere without passing them through props, right? So that's where the context API is pretty useful. Basically what it is, at a very high level, is about the information that is globally available, and you can determine, like, you can share this information throughout the application or as a part of the application. For example, in our application, we can actually share out throughout the Litloop application or only for our store. Tomorrow, Litloop application may have other things like the chat between the users, but we want to only share within the store. We can do that. There will be a context provider. All the children that are supposed to get the information must be wrapped using this provider. So we'll be creating a provider and we'll wrap our part of the application in that provider so that everybody gets that information within that provider. And every consumer who need this information need to use a special hook from React is called use context. That's what it is about. But if you want to dive detail, I have this full video on React Context API with code. If you are new to it, please go through it so that your concept about is fully clear. Link of the video is in the description of this video, or you can learn from any other tutorial or video of your choice. First, we need to create a context. For that, let us create a folder under app called context, and then create a file called index.js under that. In this file, we will be importing an API for React, which is called create context. And then we will have a store context that is nothing but an instance from this create context we had imported. And finally, we'll export it from here so that we can use it elsewhere. That's all about the context creation. Is very straightforward. Now we have to create a provider. For that, create a folder called provider under app folder. Again, create a file called index.js. So this provider is going to be a client-side component because we'll be managing and maintaining the state over here. So for that, we'll make it as use client, and then we can import, of course, use state because we have to maintain the state of the cart in our provider from React. We have created a store context, so let's import that as well. And then let's create the provider. We'll name it a store provider. This provider will take the children because we will wrap our entire store with this provider so that all the data we put into the context can be accessed throughout the store application. So we'll pass the children. Next, we'll initialize the state, which is nothing but our cart data with the use state. And by default, we'll make the cart data as empty, as if nothing there in the cart. And then simply store context dot provider. We have learned about this already as a theory. And then the value is basically an object that has card data and set card data that we can actually use everywhere. So here one thing to note, that the card data is to fetch the data in the card. Set card data is to add or set the data into the card, right? Set the latest data into the card. And then we have the children over here. So this is pretty much is how our provider look like. Next thing is to make our store application aware of this API. So let us go to the layout of the store. We have two layout. One is that entire applications layout where the home page and everything is there. And then we had created another layout called store layout. So inside the store, you had another layout. Now the data, the book data is more relevant to only the store part of the entire application. So it makes sense that we only use the provider into this layout, not outside of it, because there we may not need this card data at all. So for that, we'll be importing it. Import over here, the store provider we just now created. And then the next thing would be just to wrap everything that we have over here in our layout using the store provider. That's it. So just to quickly recap, we have created a context, then we've created a provider, we have given the context to the provider, and then make this provider available throughout the store part of the application so that any state we are managing through the context API, like our card data, we have an access to that card data throughout the store. Plus we have a way to access the setter method to set the new card data into it. We are good with that. Okay, so as we have done now provider and the context, everything, we can come back to our add to cart component and then really now start adding things into the cart, right? Now we are going to make it much more alive. So for this, let us import a hook from React, which is called use context. So this is the hook. And then we will be importing our store context. Good. We have added the card data and how to mutate the card data, how to add the new card data, the set card data into the context. We have to retrieve that so that we can use the set card data function to set new card data, this new book to the cart, right? So for that, what we'll be doing is into the add to cart method, we will go and get card data, set card data equals to use context hook of React and pass your store context. So this is going to give me both of this. One is card data, one is set card data. And the next step is pretty simple. You get the set card data function, and wherever you got this new data, you just insert your new data stuff. So how do you do that? You use the array destructuring over here. You have existing card data, you restructure that, and then you insert new data. All right. So now we have actually added a new book, a book to our empty cart. So every time I'm clicking on it, my card data will have incremented value. Do you want to see that once quick? Let us just print the card data over here and start clicking on this button and check the card data stuff over here, the console.log. So you see that? You see that it's incrementing, it's adding, and this card data is also getting added. So there are things are getting added into the cart. This is beautiful, right? So we are having things getting added to the cart. However, the next part that we have to do, as and when things are getting added to the cart, I want to increment the book count over here so that I know these books are actually getting added to the cart. Let's do that part. The best part of Context API is the values are available for you throughout the application or the part of the application which is part of the provider. So if you remember, our provider is basically around all the store. So it means I can come to now nav links also, which is part of my store layout. I can retrieve the current data that's there in the cart. How to do that? To make that happen, I have to again use the context. So Context API, first import the use context from React, then import the store context, our own context, so that we can get the latest card data from there. And then let's get into the navlinks component and retrieve the current data of the card. We'll use the use context hook, pass the store context into it. That's my current card data. Okay. So it means I can actually retrieve the length of it because it's an array, and very well put it inside the cart menu, right? I can actually do that code also. But before that, one thing to remember, I have used this use context hook of React. Now this is a client side component. Then if I have to use that in my Next.js, I have to make the Next.js component also a client side component, else I'll be getting an error. So I'll be using use client directory. So my error is gone. One thing to call out here, don't make all the component as client component. In when you are working with Next.js app router, you make a component as client component only when it is required. So you're already seeing, like, I am not putting use client on every component. Wherever it is truly required, it has user interactiveness, or I'm using an API which is a client side API from React only when I'm using this use client directive. Okay, so let's move on and show this count beside the cart name item. So this is the place where we are showing the link.name, nothing but each of this link name. Here we can put a condition, something like this. If link.name is cart, and if cart data is available and the length of the cart data is more than 0, it means that it has at least one item. In that case, we can show it as first the name of the link and then in a bracket show the length of the cart. How many items are there in the cart? Otherwise, as it is, right? So this is my code. I'll come over here, refresh it once. I clicked on this buy. You see, it's got incremented by 1. I click on this rent, incremented by 1 more. Click on this, incremented on this. So try to understand it again that each of these are different component, and sometimes these components may not be present in the same component hierarchy or same tree, but still I am able to pass the data from one to another using the context API. That's what we have achieved. The next thing is, once I click on this cart, I want to get into a new page where I'll be able to list down all the items that I've added into the cart and create a payment form and then check out with the payment. Let's do that next. Let's create a new route for this cart, right? So for that, the route that we have mapped already in the nav items is with /store/cart. You know already what to do. So inside /store, it means under the store folder, under app folder, create a new folder called cart. And inside cart, create a new file called page.js. Now this will be our cart page. So let's create a simple React component. This is a very simple React component which has a div. Inside that div is a header, welcome Mr. X. And then there is a thank you note for your purchase. And there is an empty div. Here we'll be adding few more components. But at this stage, let's see. If we click on this cart 3, yes, it's happening. It's going to /store/cart, welcome Mr. X, and thank you for your purchase. Now what we're going to do over here, we're going to repeat the items that are there in the cart and then give a payment form. We also want to give, like, out of all the things that they have added to the cart, what is the total value of the items that they are going to pay for. So for that, we'll be creating two components. One component where we list down the order details. Let's say the component name is order details. And then the other component, which is called payment, where there will be a form and user can start entering their card details and start paying. So these are the two components now we have to create. Let's create them. All the components we are logically creating under the UI folder. So under UI folder, these components are related to the cart. So let us create a folder called cart, and inside cart, let us create these two components. So first component that we are going to create is called order details. So we'll create a order details.js, and the second one we'll be creating is called payment.js. Okay, let's create a simple React component for both order details and payment and import them back to the cart page so that we get rid of this error we are seeing at the right side and we incrementally code it, right? That's the best way of coding. That's what we have learned. So first for the payment, const payment. Here is a simple payment component, nothing but having a div at this point of time. I'm going to copy the same, go to order details and this change to order details and change it to order details component. Okay, we have to also change this, otherwise we'll get a conflict. Order details, then come to page order details from the order details, and then the last thing would be import payment from the payment. So the error is gone. We have both order details and payment. Now is a matter of time. We write code for each of this component. In one of them, we'll show everything that we have added into the card. Another one is just a form so that user can put their card information and then just do a checkout. So first we will finish the coding for order details. In this component, we are going to show what are the things that we have added to the cart, what is their value, and what is the total amount of value a user has to pay, right? So for this one, we are going to do this div in a way so that it looks little elegant. We'll add some class for this. Again, I am not going to explain all the classes because these are all tailwind classes, easily available, and you also have the source code. The link to the source code is in the description of this video. You can always pull it and follow and copy some of these class names, but some of the important ones that I'm going to explain. So we'll give a full width, then a white background so that it looks, yeah, a bit different. Give around it. Of course, give some padding, some margin. So as you see, like it actually started appearing already, right? So all the details is appearing as a section for it. Now we can use all other styles for our breakpoints. You can go ahead and start becoming as creative as possible about the styling. Also refer to the source code. And then this order details, let me make this as one of the heading. Let's add some classes so that it stands out. Yeah. Now what are going to do? What we are going to show like how many books that you have purchased and what is the cost of them, right? For that, I have to first get the data from the cart, and by this time, you know how to get the data from the cart. You have to first get the use context, and from there, you have to retrieve the cart data information, right? We have learned that, and then we will do certain computation on top of that. So first, import use context from React. Then we need to import the store context. We have seen it before that if we use context, you have to make the component as a client component. Okay, now what we're going to do, we have the use context and the store context. That means we'll be able to retrieve the card data, pass the store context to this. So that's our card data. It is available throughout the store application. Now this card data is an array. Using this card data, I can now compute and get different kind of values that I'm looking for. So I am first looking for how many books that user have selected that are for buying and how many books that user have selected that are for rent. What is the total price of the books that are selected for buying? What are the price of the books that are selected for the rent? Okay, so let's do these computations. First is const books to buy. I have the card data. I can always filter it using the type that I have added, buy or rent, if you remember in the beginning. Okay, what is the filter value? So return if book dot type is buy. So I have now all the books that are for buying. Similarly, I can have another one which says books to rent, created another variable, and the filter criteria should be rent. So these two are done. Now what I'm going to do, these are individually array. So this array will have all the books to buy. This array will have all the books to rent. Now I can use a reduce on top of this arrays to find out what is the total cost that for all the books that somebody have selected to buy and similarly for rent. So const price to buy equals to books to buy dot reduce. You know array reduce. I'm not explaining it over here. So here what we will be doing, it takes an accumulator and these are the individual item inside the array, individual book, and I am doing accumulator plus book dot book has a sell price. So in our previous video, when we cooked up the data, we know that book has a sell price, right? And book also has a rent price, and then initialize the accumulator with a 0. So this is for our price to buy. Similarly, we can also calculate a price for rent. So price to buy and price to rent. So here, instead of sell price, I'll be banking on rent price. So this is completely data driven, the data we had created already. And based on that, we are actually computing the thing. So now I have all the information: how many book to buy, what is their price, accumulative price, how many books for rent, what is their accumulative price. Now the next thing I'm going to do is, like, I'm going to write the JSX in a way so that I can start printing them. Okay, so let's print few of them. First thing, let's create a ULLI. I'm going to print how many books that I'm going to buy. So for example, books to buy dot length, we'll say buying books for, what is the amount that we have to pay for it? Very easy, we have already calculated. So that will be price to buy, and we'll also give a thing called INR as an unit. Okay. Similarly, another LI I can create over here, which says books to rent, because this also computed, and then price to rent. So let's see these two. Okay, so it is showing 0 because my cart has got, automatically refreshed. We are not storing it in the database yet. So we'll go to the books. We'll say buy, cart 1, rent 1. Okay, let's buy one more book. So we have 3. When I go over here, wow, I am buying 2 books for 330 rupees. Okay, second one is not buy, of course, it's renting. So I am renting one book for 34 INR. Awesome. You see now, like, how we are actually using the data just from the book card to the card nav item to the cards details page. Now below this, I can just create a payment form and then create a button to do a checkout straight away from here. But one task for you guys. So this is the first task I'm giving in this video. If you are watching this throughout, I want you to put few more information. For example, put a static delivery charge. Say 25 INR is the delivery charge, for delivering these books for buying and for renting. And then do addition of everything. For example, 2 books for 330 INR, 1 book for 34 plus the delivery charge together. How much is the price? Show it over here in the order details. That's your task 1. So if you're following in the order details, you have to modify this one. If you want help, the code is already there for you. Check out the code. The link is in the description of this video. You know how to do it. Okay. So now let us go ahead and focus on the payment form. The payment form will be a very simple form which will have things like, your card number, your full name, the CVV, etc. item. And inside this, let's create a form. And the form should have a bunch of label and input. So let's do a label and input. So for example, we have card number and an input text box. It's pretty simple. An input text box is a bunch of class name, and then if I go about the type, it is text. It has an ID called card, so the respective label will have an HTML4 attribute with the same value, and there is a placeholder. So that's how the card number is appearing over here. Let us put some style in the form so that it looks little more beautiful, like a background and all. So I provided some more style on the form label, so it looks great. So like how I have added this div, and inside that this label and input, let's add other fields like, the name on the card, the CVV, date of birth, or the card expiry. Date of birth you really don't require, card expiry, all this information. So let's add them. Okay, so beautiful. I have added name on the card, card expiry, CVV, and these are like same repetition, just a copy paste, and changing the type of the input box. For example, this can be a number, this can be a date, this can be a text, this can be again a number. So that's what you have. And then we have a button to make the payment. So for now, what we'll be doing is, like, as it is a button, it needs kind of interactivity. So that means it actually demand me to make this as a client component. We can now navigate from make payment to the track order page directly after you fill up the form. So let's go ahead and create a function called payment, or make payment rather, const make payment. What it does right now, it is just going to take me to this route. The route is nothing but, when I click on track order, the route will be /track order. So it is supposed to take me to the /track order route. So for that, we have learned in our previous videos that Next.js provide a hook called use router. This is you have to import from next/navigation, right? And you can get an instance of the router, and then you can use this instance of the router, call the push method on it, and then give where you want to basically navigate to. So for us, it is like /store/track-order. Okay. And then finally, take this make payment, go to the button that we have below. This is the button. Here I can add an on click handler and call the make payment method. So right now there is no validation, nothing as such. So for example, you give some kind of fake card data over here, though it doesn't have any validation. You don't have to really put anything as such, but just to show that this form works correctly, click on make payment. That's it. You now got into the track order page. Now in the track order page, you can print out, hey, your order is successful, and now this is your order ID. Go ahead and track order. We are actually going to implement a track order page once we get all our data to the database. That's what is our next video about. Taking all the data to the database, and instead of serving it from the fake data, we'll be doing everything from the database so that we can manage our users better. We can store the sessions better. We can create a genuine track order from the backend itself through the API and give the order ID back to the UI so that the order ID can be tracked as well. But so far, all the basic things are done. So far, you are able to go to the books. You are able to add one or more books for either buying or either renting, and then you can come to your cart. You can see, total you purchased 2 books, rented 2 books. I have given you a task to create the addition of it and show it over here. Then you enter something over here as your card details, and then you make a payment. You go to the track order. Everything is done. So hey guys, here is a task for you after watching this video, after making things with me. So you can add the things onto the cart that works so far. Once you go to the cart, you are able to see like order details and the card number. What I want you to do, I want you to add one more component where you will list down all the items that got added to the cart and add a delete functionality for that. So it means from here, you want to remove an item or one or more items from the cart, you can do it from that page. So add one more div, list out all the items in the cart with a delete icon. Once you click on the delete icon, you just remove it from the cart, similarly how we had added into the cart. So again, same concept, get the context, get the latest card data, do array computation, remove one item, set the card data back with the new set of card data. That's it. It's very simple. And as and when you do that, the beauty of it, you'll see like without any code changes, this portion also gets changed. The second thing that you want to do, we have made this kind of operational, but once you go to these details, these things are not operational yet. If I click on it, it doesn't get added, nothing happened. So can you add the same functionality that we have done for the book cards for the book details as well? And the last task is about showing the total amount that somebody has to pay. So you need to do a summation of things and show a total amount over there. So these 3 tasks you have to complete. If you happen to complete that task, please post your GitHub repo into the Discord. This is the Discord channel link. You can find the same into the description of this video as well. And anytime if you are stuck, all the code is done, it's committed, it pushed, find the link of the GitHub repository in the description of the video as well, so that you can actually look and refer, but or look at it only when you are stuck. I'm looking forward to see your task, and that's when I'll feel that my teaching is fulfilled. I hope it was useful to you. In the next video, we are going to connect to the database directly. I'm going to use a Postgre database where we'll be doing some kind of data design, database design, and our rows, columns, and data, and whatever fake data we are using, we're going to throw that away and directly connect to the databases and more realize how the server actions, server-side component used to fetch the data, also about how to create APIs with Next.js app router. See you there.